Something's evolving within our shared unconsciousness. The age of the vulnerable empath is over. Carl Jung foresaw a time when those with deep feelings would become the creators. That time has arrived. You've sensed it, haven't you? That significant internal change recently, an aversion to outdated behaviors that burns intensely within you. This isn't simply exhaustion, this is an awakening. And here's why this evolution terrifies those who depend on empaths remaining unaware. This newfound identity isn't about experiencing less emotion, it's about utilizing emotion as a tool for truth. Jung termed this the emergence of the authentic self, and the world is unprepared for the consequences when an empath fully embraces their power. But before we delve further, allow me to pose a question. Have you observed how differently people are treating you now? How those who once regarded you as their support now label you as unfeeling? How family members who once valued your understanding now accuse you of being critical? That's not accidental. That's the system resisting your transformation, and it's about to intensify before it improves. Let's first discuss the former identity, the absorber, the caregiver, the pushover. Society conditioned empaths to be emotional receptacles. From the moment you displayed your first sign of sensitivity, you unquestioningly absorbed everyone's pain. Your parents' drunken anger became your anxiety. Your partner's betrayal became your lack of confidence. Your family's issues became your responsibility to resolve. You were the buffer that maintained the smooth operation of dysfunctional systems. Every toxic workplace required someone like you to sustain morale, while management exploited employees. Every fractured family needed someone like you to act as a therapist while everyone else evaded accountability. Every narcissist needed someone like you to regulate their emotions while they refused to engage in their own self-reflection. And you complied. You absorbed everything. You smiled through the suffering. You justified others' poor behavior. You offered chance after chance after chance. You believed in everyone's potential, even when they demonstrated their true nature. You carried emotional burdens that weren't yours because you believed. That's what morally upright individuals do. But here's what they concealed from you. Here's the revelation that transforms everything. You weren't simply absorbing, you were analyzing. Your empathic mind was constantly gathering data, fleeting micro-expressions, subtle shifts in tone indicating dishonesty, behavioral patterns predicting future actions. You constructed a psychological profile of everyone who ever harmed you. You know their triggers better than they do. You grasp their insecurities at depths they've never acknowledged. You've mapped their fears, their desires, their manipulations, their vulnerabilities. You've generated a comprehensive psychological profile of every individual in your life. Your mind has been conducting this analysis in the background for years, meticulously cataloging data like a supercomputer. You know precisely what to say to comfort them. You also know precisely what to say to destroy them. You know which words would heal their deepest wounds. You also know which words would utterly shatter them. You've always possessed this knowledge. You simply never utilized it until now. Jung referred to this as the psychological war room. Your mind isn't a victim's journal filled with complaints and grievances. It's a strategist's arsenal awaiting activation. Every moment of pain you endured provided you with intelligence. Every betrayal you forgave granted you insight. Every boundary you allowed someone to cross furnished you with data about their true character. You weren't weak during those years. You were collecting intelligence, and something recently pushed you beyond your breaking point. That's when the transformation commenced. That's when you finally accessed the war room and examined all the data you'd been accumulating. That's when everything shifted. Welcome to the new era identity, the mirror. When an empath integrates their shadow self, everything changes. You cease absorbing pain and begin reflecting truth. This isn't malice, this is clarity. And clarity is the most perilous thing you can offer someone living in delusion. The mirror doesn't attack. The mirror simply reveals people as they truly are, rather than as they pretend to be. When someone lies to you, you no longer feign belief. When someone manipulates you, you immediately call them out. When someone violates a boundary, you enforce consequences without remorse. You've ceased shielding people from the repercussions of their own actions, and this utterly terrifies them because they've never encountered this version of you before. The version that perceives everything and refuses to pretend otherwise. The version that articulates uncomfortable truths without softening the delivery. The version that withdraws energy from undeserving individuals without explanation or apology. Why is this occurring now? You've reached what Jung termed the saturation point. Your empathic system absorbed sufficient data to finally discern the complete pattern. Not just isolated incidents, but the comprehensive, systematic manner in which people have been exploiting you. The lies, the manipulation, the exploitation, all coalesced into perfect clarity. This is individuation, Jung's process of becoming whole. But for the empath, individuation carries a very specific meaning. Empaths aren't flawed, they are alchemists in progress. It entails accepting your own capacity for destruction. Your shadow self isn't merely sadness and sensitivity, it's rage, it's calculated precision, it's the ability to dismantle someone psychologically if you choose to utilize your knowledge of them. Most empaths spend their entire lives avoiding this shadow self. You've been taught that anger is negative, that boundaries are unkind, that speaking truth is hurtful. You've been conditioned to suppress your power because people are more comfortable with a vulnerable empath than a resilient one. A vulnerable empath can be controlled, exploited, manipulated. A resilient empath poses a threat to existing power structures. Integrating this shadow self doesn't transform you into an evil person. It completes you. It provides you with the sword you've been lacking. Kind individuals aren't weak individuals incapable of defending themselves. They're strong individuals who choose restraint because they genuinely possess something to restrain. That choice only holds significance when you possess the power to inflict damage, but consciously choose not to. Consider it this way. If someone is kind because they're too feeble to be cruel, that's not virtue. That's simply a survival tactic. But if someone possesses the capacity for calculated psychological warfare and still opts for kindness, that's genuine strength. That's integrated power. That's what you're evolving into. Let's examine your superpower in greater detail, because most empaths don't even recognize the extraordinary nature of their abilities. Your psychological X-ray vision isn't magic or mysticism. It's rapid data processing occurring at speeds that would make artificial intelligence envious. Your brain analyzes thousands of microsignals concurrently. Pupil dilation indicating arousal or fear, breathing patterns revealing stress or deception, micro-expressions flashing across someone's face for milliseconds before they consciously control their features, voice tone variations betraying hidden emotions, body language incongruencies signaling internal conflict. Jung recognized this as high-level intelligence, not merely feelings. When you assert that you have a gut feeling about someone, what you're truly experiencing is your unconscious mind processing vast amounts of data and delivering a conclusion. Your intuition is actually your brain's pattern recognition system, identifying familiar psychological signatures. Most individuals process emotional information slowly and deliberately. They require time to contemplate whether someone appears trustworthy. They require repeated interactions to form opinions. They require overt signals before they recognize manipulation. You process all of this instantaneously and unconsciously. That's why you know someone is lying before they complete their sentence. That's why you sense the room's tension before others notice anything amiss. Your nervous system is a sophisticated scanning device that detects psychological weather patterns imperceptible to others. This is why you've always felt different. You're operating with a different perceptual apparatus than most humans. You're perceiving information that's invisible to others. And for years, people have informed you that this gift was a problem. Too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. They pathologized your superpower because it made them uneasy. Now, let's address why people are reacting negatively to you lately. When the empath transforms, the entire system collapses. You are the load-bearing wall in dysfunctional structures. Remove that wall, and everything crumbles into the truth it always was. Jung documented what he termed the narcissistic collapse. When an empath ceases nurturing a toxic individual, that individual starves emotionally. They panic, they rage, they employ every manipulative tactic in their repertoire to draw you back into the old dynamic. Why? Because they constructed their entire false self upon your emotional labor. Without you regulating their emotions, validating their delusions, and absorbing their projections, they must confront their own internal emptiness. You're witnessing this unfold in real time. Family members who once labeled you as oversensitive suddenly accuse you of being cold and heartless. Friends who took your assistance for granted now assert that you've deteriorated and are no longer the person they once knew. Partners who depended on your accommodation label you as selfish for establishing the most fundamental boundaries. Colleagues who offload their emotional labor onto you now claim you're not a team player. This is your villain origin story, and it's actually indicative of healing, not regression. Jung contended that stepping outside of collective unconscious agreements is the initial step towards sanity. When everyone around you functions from dysfunction, choosing health resembles rebellion. Society deems it problematic. Psychology terms it individuation. Here's the controversial truth that no one dares to utter aloud. Feeling like the antagonist currently signifies that you're doing something correctly. You're disrupting patterns that relied on your self-sacrifice. The individuals benefiting from those patterns will fight desperately to restore them. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility to alleviate. Their panic isn't your emergency to resolve. Their collapse isn't your obligation to prevent. Let me be even more explicit about what's transpiring. That mother who consistently demanded that you accommodate her mood swings is now labeling you as disrespectful because you've ceased managing her emotions. That friend who only contacted you when they required something is informing everyone that you're a poor friend because you've ceased being available on demand. That partner who took your loyalty for granted is asserting that you're cruel because you finally enforced a boundary they've been violating for years. They're not mistaken that you've changed. They're mistaken about the significance of that change. You haven't become cruel. You've become boundaried. You haven't become selfish. You've become self-preserving. You haven't become cold. You've become selective about where your warmth is directed. But there exists a genuine peril here that Jung cautioned against, and you must comprehend it before you proceed too far down this path. When you perceive everything clearly, you risk isolating yourself entirely from human connection. If you can decipher every individual's hidden agenda, every unspoken resentment, every masked manipulation, every shadow they're projecting, how do you authentically relate to anyone? This is the empath's burden in the new era. Superior perception without wisdom engenders existential loneliness. You become the sole conscious individual in a room filled with sleepwalkers. You perceive the truth underlying every social interaction, every relationship dynamic, every institutional structure, and that truth separates you from the collective in ways that can be profoundly isolating. You begin to see everyone's wounds, and no one appears whole. You recognize everyone's patterns, and no one appears authentic. You detect everyone's manipulations, and no one appears trustworthy. This is when empaths frequently withdraw entirely, deciding that solitude is safer than engaging with a world populated by unconscious individuals. But isolation isn't integration. It's merely another form of imbalance. Jung was unequivocal about this. The objective isn't to remove yourself from society. The objective is to engage with society consciously while upholding your integrity. That's significantly more challenging than simply leaving, but it's also the sole path to genuine fulfillment. There's another danger that might be even more insidious: inflation. When you realize that your perceptual abilities surpass those of most individuals by orders of magnitude, when you consistently predict outcomes that others can't foresee, when you comprehend human psychology at depths that trained therapists overlook, you might begin to believe that you're special, chosen, enlightened, distinct from ordinary humans. This is ego inflation, and it's a trap that ensnares numerous empaths who reach this stage. The instant you identify as superior to others, you've completely missed the point. Your gift transforms into a weapon of judgment rather than a tool for understanding. You begin to look down upon people for their unconsciousness instead of exhibiting compassion for their journey. You become the very thing you once despised, someone who utilizes their power to feel superior to others. The integrated empath doesn't feel superior. They feel responsible. They comprehend that with great perception comes a great temptation to misuse that perception. Every piece of information you possess regarding someone's vulnerabilities is a test of your integrity. Will you utilize it to help or harm? Will you weaponize someone's wounds or create space for their healing? The objective isn't to become a psychological puppet master who manipulates everyone around them. The objective is to protect yourself from genuine threats while maintaining your humanity toward everyone else. This is the razor's edge you're traversing now. Excessive openness, and you're destroyed. Excessive guardedness, and you become what harmed you. So, what does the integrated empath actually resemble in practice? Allow me to be extremely clear about something that confuses most individuals. The integrated empath isn't nice, they are kind. And there exists a significant distinction between these two qualities that most individuals fail to grasp. Nice people avoid conflict to preserve peace at any cost. Kind people engage in conflict when necessary to uphold integrity and truth. Nice people accommodate dysfunction to avert making waves. Kind people refuse to enable dysfunction, even when it costs them relationships. Nice people smile while absorbing abuse because they don't want to appear difficult. Kind people establish boundaries without remorse because they know self-respect is non-negotiable. Nice people require everyone to like them. Kind people need to be able to respect themselves when they gaze in the mirror. Nice people sacrifice their truth to maintain harmony. Kind people articulate their truth even when it disrupts harmony because false peace isn't actually peace at all. The integrated empath possesses a sword. They've sharpened it through years of observing human behavior. They know precisely where to strike to inflict maximum psychological damage. They simply keep it sheathed unless absolutely necessary for self-defense. They can psychologically destroy you if they choose, revealing truths about you that you've spent years concealing from yourself. They simply choose not to because destruction isn't the point. Boundaries are the point. This restraint, underpinned by actual power, is what renders them truly formidable. Anyone can restrain themselves if they're weak and have no other option. But choosing restraint when you possess the power to annihilate someone, that's the hallmark of integrated strength. That's what distinguishes the integrated empath from both the victim and the perpetrator. This is the era in which the empath becomes the leader, not the servant. Consider what you've been doing your entire life. You've been instantly reading rooms, predicting outcomes that others can't foresee, understanding human nature at depths that most individuals never access. You've been managing complex emotional dynamics, mediating conflicts, and envisioning solutions that preserve everyone's dignity. Those skills don't belong in a support role. They belong in positions of influence and decision-making power. The world doesn't require more people-pleasers in leadership. It requires individuals who can see clearly through political games, speak truthfully despite pressure to conform, and lead authentically from integrated wholeness. That's you. Once you accept it, once you cease diminishing yourself to make others comfortable, once you claim your seat at tables you've been serving from the sidelines. Here's what actually changes in practical terms during this new era. You trust your gut instantly without second-guessing yourself into paralysis. When someone feels off, you no longer override that instinct with logical justifications or the benefit of the doubt. You don't require 3 more chances to confirm what you already know in your bones. You act on your perception immediately and unapologetically. You enforce boundaries without guilt, without explanation, without justification. If someone crosses a line, you don't engage in lengthy discussions about why it bothered you. You don't write paragraphs explaining your feelings. You don't seek their understanding or validation. You simply enforce the consequence and move on with your life. No means no. That's the complete sentence. You select your energy investments with the discernment of a master investor. Your empathy becomes selective and strategic. Not everyone deserves your emotional labor. Not every wound is yours to heal. Not every broken person is your project to fix. Not every crisis is your emergency to resolve. You get to choose where your energy flows. And you choose based on reciprocity, respect, and genuine connection. You cease attempting to make people see you accurately. This is huge. You release the exhausting need to correct everyone's misperceptions about you. If they're determined to misunderstand you, that's their limitation, not your responsibility. You exist authentically and let them deal with their distorted perceptions alone. Their narrative about you is their story to carry, not yours to manage. You articulate your truth without softening it for comfort. You cease adding qualifiers and apologies to every boundary. You cease prefacing your needs with "I'm sorry, but" or "I don't mean to be difficult." You state what is without cushioning reality for people who should be mature enough to handle it. You allow people to experience the consequences of their own choices. This might be the most challenging aspect. You cease rescuing people from problems they created. You cease fixing situations that aren't your responsibility to fix. You let the natural consequences play out even when it's painful to watch, because that's how people learn and grow. The final message is this: you have spent your entire life feeling others, absorbing their emotions, processing their trauma, regulating their nervous systems, managing their reactions, protecting their feelings. Now you must feel yourself. your own anger, your own boundaries, your own limits, your own truth, your own power. The world doesn't need you to fix it. That was never your job, regardless of what anyone told you. The world needs you to see it clearly and respond with integrated power, to be the mirror that reflects truth, to be the boundary that teaches respect, to be the example that demonstrates what healthy looks like. This is your era, not because the stars aligned or because you're special or chosen. This is your era because you've done the work. You've integrated your shadow self. You've accepted your power. You've ceased apologizing for your perception. You've begun wielding your gifts consciously instead of unconsciously. This is the era in which empaths cease being emotional support animals for everyone around them and begin being the architects Jung predicted you would become. The era in which your sensitivity becomes your greatest strength rather than your deepest weakness. The era in which you cease absorbing the world's pain and begin reflecting its truth back with crystalline clarity. You're not here to make people comfortable. You're here to make people conscious, and consciousness is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Truth is uncomfortable. Your presence will make unconscious people squirm. That discomfort is the signal they need to awaken. Whether they respond to that signal is their choice, not your responsibility. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get the Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.